Dr. No, more like Dr. Yes.
Now dig on this.
Hey guys, hello. How are you
Hi.
going? I'm well. Hope
Hello.
you're well too. And we like to welcome you to Classic Movie Banter. You know that podcast where me, that guy Brenton, and that other guy over there, Nathan,
Oh, hi there.
we talk about films that are 20 years or older. 20 years!
58 years, Brenton.
To be precise. And we
Ooh.
tell you, our lovely listeners, if those films are still worth watching today. And if you can grab those movies, like grab them in your fist, throw them on your TV screen in your living room, invite all your mates over on a Thursday night and say, hey, this is a movie we're going to watch tonight. And everyone gets amongst it and it's a good, wild night. Everyone goes, wow, I really want to go over to Brenton's place again and watch a movie because he picks the best movies. I wonder why. Actually, it's because he runs a podcast with his mate Nathan. Oh, really? I haven't listened to it. I haven't heard about it. Well, you should really check them out on Twitter and Instagram because they post great content on there as well. Oh, really? I might do that. Hey, guys, shut up. We're watching the movie. Oh, sorry, Brenton.
Listeners, I want you to know that while Brenton was doing that, he was holding up some like finger puppets and just like reenacting his friends with those.
I had like a puppet stage, you know what I mean? Like those, like with the fucking curtain. You know, like those old puppets.
Yeah, like the old school ones, like, yeah.
Yeah, and I had various characters. Nathan was a puppet as well.
Oh no, tell me about it.
Nathan is a puppet on this show. Anyway, it's more like I'm the puppet this week. Nathan, would you like to fill the listeners in as to why I'm the puppet this week?
Because we're doing Brenton's favorite thing where we review a James Bond movie, everyone. You know, we're focusing on the one that started it all, from Ian Fleming himself. It's Dr. No.
It's Dr. No.
That sounds like a Scooby-Doo, like, reveal. Oh no, Dr. No.
I know, right? Not Dr. No. I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids and your dumb dog.
I would have gone away with it too if it wasn't for your stupid spy and your beautiful girlfriend.
Yes.
Now, Brenton, before we get into Dr. No, we do need to address the elephant in the room.
That was a really bad elephant impression, guys.
When did you watch Dumbo, mate? Like, you're just sitting there making like sound effects in the cinema, just like, Brenton, this is not the sound elephants make.
Danny DeVito, is that you?
No. No. Like it happened a couple weeks back, but you know, Sean Connery did pass away, sadly.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's so funny because like coincidentally, like he was the next Bond we had to do, and so maybe Sean caught wind. He's like, I can't listen to any more of this. So.
Yeah. Totally, he was just like, oh, feck. They're going back to my first film. I'm done. I'm getting out of here, guys. I'm all good. I'm signing off. No, but in all seriousness, you know, regardless of what you think about Sean Connery as a person, I guess his filmography kind of speaks for itself. He's someone that created a character that so many people have related to, that so many people have idolized. You know, he really created this whole franchise, really, like
that Brenton loves.
Off the yeah, exactly. It's all his fault.
Yeah, it's
all
you,
his
Sean.
fault, and
You did this.
No, so you know, I guess what a legacy to leave behind, and yeah, like I said, regardless of what you think about him personally, because I hear that he was a bit of a controversial
He was a controversial
individual,
character.
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, what Bond hasn't?
Exactly. I guess what a filmography, what a legacy to leave behind,
Yeah.
and good on you, Sean, in that aspect of your life.
Well
yeah.
done, Sean. And I hopefully, no matter what we say about Dr. No today, don't take it to heart. we still like you.
You know what? I am sure, in fact, I am positive that Sean Connery does not give a shit about what we think about
Or
Dr.
any
No.
of the Bonds, frankly.
Exactly. He's like, it's like, as long as we don't like the ones that he's not in, he's like, he's all good. He's like, I wasn't in that one. All good.
That's okay.
So, guys, in case you didn't know already, Dr. No was the first James Bond filmed, and it was released in 1962, and it was directed by Terence Young. And Terence Young also directed a couple of other James Bond films. He directed Russia with Love in 1963 and Thunderball in 1965. Good on you, Terence. Thanks for doing those.
You sound like an Australian political ad. It's like, good on you, Terrace. You voted right.
Good on you, Terence. Keeping the dream alive. So yeah, and basically, like, when I look at his filmography, that's all that really stands out. You know what I mean? Like, he's just been doing Bond.
He really has been doing Bond. It was a very raunchy set.
Damn, it was.
Speaking of raunchy, Brenton, tell us about the plot of Dr. No. Can you pitch me the movie?
So, Dr. No.
He just does Austin Powers the whole movie. Dr. New.
Good start. So Dr. No. Fuck me. Dude.
No, Brenton.
This is a bad start. Dr. No.
Just like Barbara Broccoli sitting in her office being like what?
We're in Jamaica, right? And a British agent has disappeared
Oh, no.
mysteriously. And so, you know what MI6 does? They're like, hey, we need to get that guy, 007, aka James Bond, and we need to send him to Jamaica, to the Caribbean, man, and find out and investigate what happened to this British agent and why he disappeared.
Oh.
And so James arrives in Jamaica and he starts hanging out on beaches, doing various activities, and then he starts to hear whispers of this nefarious and mysterious Dr. No. Now, what makes Dr. No so mysterious? Well, his plans are very mysterious, but so is his ethnicity.
Oh, of course. The most mysterious thing of all.
In fact, some would say that might be the biggest plot twist in the movie.
Oh, who would have thought?
And Nathan, James Bond needs to find out what Dr. No is doing and put a stop to it.
Ah, of course.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Brenton. Wow, what a pitch for a James Bond movie.
All I knew about that pitch, by the way, going into it, was that I was going to make a joke about the ethnicity thing.
Oh, Christ.
Which we'll get into. We'll get into it later on, obviously.
Let's get into it
But
right
Nathan,
now.
Oh, yeah, let's do it. What'd you think, Nathan?
Of the man or the movie?
Oh, both.
Oh, here we go. Well, isn't that something? Dr. No himself, he's not exactly Chinese, is he, Brenton?
He doesn't look Chinese. I've never seen someone that his Chinese heritage looks like that. Let's just say that.
No. So, he doesn't really live up, not that him being Chinese is his sole kind of trait, but there's a lot of build up for him, a lot of build up for Dr. No, and you're kind of let down by him. Brenton, these exact same comments could be attributed to the movie itself, Brenton.
Whoa, shots fired. I will say about Dr. Julius No.
His name's Julius. Jesus.
Obviously, the problem with Julius is that the actor in question is not actually Chinese, and so there's some bad makeup done there again. Once again in the Bond franchise, which
the Bond movies only continue to do down the line.
Exactly, it's setting trends left, right, and center, and also that's not the only character that kind of has some egregious yellow face going on.
Oh, jeez.
All that aside, Nathan, we come to this film and you made a really interesting point. You said that, the movie itself, Dr. No, is raised in this kind of it hooks you in kind of, and then it kind of just lets you down a bit. Is that what you'd say, Nathan? Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that what you're saying?
You are, so please just, step back a little bit, mate.
Oh, sorry. I'll take 5 paces back and turn around.
What I'm about to say is really saying something, but I think this might be the most boring James Bond film we've reviewed. But I'm more interested on your take, Brenton, because you're the one with the most vitriol for this franchise. So how does this... Because after GoldenEye with Jeremy, you were looking forward to this.
Yeah, I was. I wanted to see where it all started and see where things went wrong.
And what have you learned, Brenton?
I've learned a lot from this. I've learned a lot.
Oh.
So basically what I learned was that let's get into my thoughts on the film. So here we go. So it starts, right? It starts and I'm like, I'm kind of enjoying this.
Oh.
I think this is quite good. I like that there's not as much shit going on. I like that we're just kind of focusing on James and we're just focusing on his mission. And as of such, because there's not so many fucking henchmen, there's not all these staples of the franchise and all these characters thrown in your face every 2 seconds, we can get to know James. We can get to know how he operates and why that in itself is interesting. And he feels like a character. That's right. And for a certain extent, I was like, this is kind of a character study and I'm into this. And I was really enjoying it, Nathan. And then it takes a turn for the shitbed. And what happens is basically it feels like it has to add all these things to it that the latter films then kind of expand upon. They expand upon the wrong things of the film. You know what I mean? So it expands upon, it's like, oh God, we got one weirdo insane villain that's got all these weird ticks or whatever. Let's add more henchmen and stuff and let's do more of that. Oh, we've got this Bond girl in this. We've got a couple of girls and one of them's in a bikini at some point and singing the coconut song and mangoes and shit.
Which to the movie's defense, the books were doing for ages before they did.
I get that. And it's not even when those elements come in that I was disappointed. right? Because like, you know, Dr. No comes in towards the end. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, he doesn't rock up until like the last 20 minutes, so you got to wait for this Doctor No.
And it's not that I didn't like these characters. I liked the setup. I liked where we were going. I was like, okay, cool. Like we're heading towards the climax, and the climax just isn't a climax. It's just like the most boring thing happens, and you're like, cool. And then it just I just feel like this movie did me dirty, is what I'd sum it up. Like if I was like, fuck, you had me. I was like, oh god, that's what I want. Like that's what I want this to be, and this is really kind of interesting and cool. And that just kind of did me dirty, and I was left feeling like a piece of shit. And I just knew that it wasn't going to improve because, like, you know, you go into the next sequels, and you're like, all right, fuck, we're back to this shit, and then nothing matters. There's no consequence to anything. It's just like,
no. And it's funny because you could have set that up. You could have set up this narrative thread that pays off in the latter sequels, but there's not really anything there.
But like, I feel like it was setting things up. Anything like James was an interesting character, like on his own. You were like, oh, I like how this, like, it's interesting how this guy operates, and like what's going on beneath the surface of this guy. You know, like I liked where we were going, and you know, there was some questions asked, and I was like, oh, it's asking questions of the main character, you know, and like his morality, and then it's just like,
and also because like he's so young, and this is the youngest we'll see Connery. He's also kind of fucking up as he goes. Like he does make a lot of mistakes, and I like that. You see him be more vulnerable, and I like Connery in this one. Like obviously it's the one that established him and all that kind of stuff. But I really like this particular version of James Bond because he's really sad. And I found most of the sadness in Connery's performance because for some reason he's really horny in this one. He's horny in a lot of other ones, but he's really having a crack at every girl in this one. Like he goes through a lot.
That is true, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like especially the way he kisses as well. Like at one point he tries to get with a chick and he's kind of just like making out with a towel while she's getting changed. I'm like, is Sean Connery not just getting any? Like what's going on here?
I see your point, but I don't know if I agree that he's like the most horny in this one.
He just seems so sad.
But I kind of like that about him. I kind of like that he's kind of like this lost dude that's just kind of like fucking about, and it's like he's a secret agent. He's like he's undercover, you know, like he's a.
Well, that's the thing. He's actually undercover in this one.
He's British intelligence, you know what I mean? And so it's kind of interesting to see him just be like, it's like he couldn't even care less, you know what I mean? No. He's just like kind of, again, like the most interesting part of this character is like when it explores like, you know, that it is like kind of this broken individual that like, you know, has to do this job that like he's not really a person. He's just kind of this soulless guy. And it's interesting to like go into that and like, you know, see why that is. And then on top of that, like, you know, you have the staples of like the spy genre, I guess, and you add like these interesting like mix of like, you know, like crazy villains, you know, like crazy scenarios or whatever.
But the thing is that they're not that crazy in this one.
No.
Hasn't jumped the shark yet, you know what I mean? And the biggest surprise of this movie is that he's actually doing a lot of detective work. Like more than the other ones, I would say.
That's right.
Like this probably has the least action in them. If you look at the ratio of action to detectiveness, like there's a lot of researching shit in here.
Absolutely. There's how I can't even like, I can only think of like the one basically big action set piece is towards the end.
Exactly. Like the car chases aren't they're not that stunty yet. You know, the henchmen aren't that menacing yet. Like there's not that more cat and mouse kind of thing with the henchmen. So what we're left with is essentially Bond just chatting about this plot. And to be honest with you, Brenton, that's the biggest weakness of the film because the actual villainous plot isn't that interesting. It's about like, you know, Dr. No harnessing radioactive energy, which isn't really a spoiler, but like it does that thing where a lot of early 60s movies did where they're like talking about radioactive energy, but they actually don't know anything about it.
But it's not even that. Like I can forgive that to a certain extent, but what I can't forgive is like, you know, when you find out motivations and stuff and you're just like, oh god, like it's just bland, boring. It's just like there's nothing fueling it. It's just like power mongering. It's you know, your classic villains, you know, and that's a shame because like some of these characters, like I said, the setup, you're like, oh yeah, cool, this could go somewhere, and then it just doesn't. And that's like my biggest criticism of it, unfortunately.
Were you hyped up for the 3 blind mice, Brenton?
Nathan, was I hyped up? That's the question of the day. But at the same time, looking back on it, I'd watch this over some of the other ones.
That's interesting. I think is probably because it does spend that much time on character, but like I know this has always felt so pre-baked, like because especially with like Dr. No from Russia with Love, it's not till Goldfinger that you and I loved that you finally see that shit come in. Like it felt weird that Q wasn't in this.
Yeah, totally.
It felt weird that like he barely chats to Moneypenny and that kind of stuff. Like it's also weird that like the opening song isn't really like an opening song that you get in the other ones.
All those things you said that like, you know, we don't have these things. I was refreshed that we didn't have them. I was like, oh, thank God, we're not like stuck to the staples of what, you know, like what this series has become. It was nice.
That's a good point, actually.
It was nice to be in M's, like, you know, like, you know, we're with M and Moneypenny at the start, and like, you know, there's some conflict there in those scenes.
Really?
They're not giving you the plot, and then they're not like finishing with like the one liner. You know what I mean? Like that's what all the other movies do. It's like, let's have some snide remarks and then leave the room and I'm on my mission.
God.
It's like, fuck, like thank God like something was actually happening.
The most conflict you get in that early scene with fucking M and James Bond is that James Bond whips out his gun and then M spends like a good minute just like shitting on it. He's just like, that's like a lady's purse gun. And he's just like bitching about it. He's like, no 00 agent will be seen with that gun. James Bond's just kind of taking it. He's just like, okay. Like that's the kind of conflict we get in this movie.
But I enjoyed that scene. Like as like I thought that was like more enjoyable than most scenes with M in some of the other movies. I was like, hey, cool. Like there's actually something happening here.
But it takes some of these staples and does something bad with them. Like, we can tell the audience that like Felix is in this movie, right?
Yeah.
He's pretty useless in this movie. I don't think they use him that well.
He's just kind of there.
He probably has the worst sunglasses ever put to cinema.
Hey, you're not wrong. But you know what? Again, like that doesn't matter to me necessarily because like it's about Bond. You know what I mean? Like it's all about Bond.
It is all about, that's what they should have called it. It's all about Bond.
I didn't necessarily need more of Felix in this.
Here's the thing, if it's going to go for a deep character study on Bond, it might have even been better since they don't have the tropes yet. If they stripped away the other girls and maybe just focused on him with one and we see why that relationship fails. Because there's a scene at one point where one of the Bond girls asks him like, oh, do you have a girlfriend? And you can see he's about to like leap into this monologue of this like dark past, but he doesn't. And it's like shit like that I kind of wanted to see.
That's it. That's what I mean. It asks questions of that character and then it's like, oh, cool, we're building to something. And then it's like, we just kind of end. You're like, oh,
yeah.
Okay. Hopefully the sequel will get into some of that.
No, it doesn't, obviously. I feel like it's funny because this kind of movie feels like a Timothy Dalton Bond as far as like the darkness that's attached to it. Like it doesn't feel like the latter Connery films.
But again, like I think that's the point. Like I think this is probably like closer to like the source material. That's probably what it's meant to be. You know what I mean? Like it's meant to like have all those other elements. I'm not saying like the elements that make it like, you know, kind of pulpy fun in the sense of like, you know, you have all the girls that he's romancing or whatever. But like at the end of the day, like it has to be a human being. We have to like understand like why someone is like doing this. And like this kind of like raises some questions, but we never like go there. And I think that maybe that's one because of the time that it was made.
No, you're not going to get a deep character study for this kind of movie.
But two, like really like walking out of this, I would have loved to ask audiences of like, you know, 1962, like, you know, what they thought, what was their favorite aspects of it? Because I imagine that the producers did that. And then the answers they got, well, oh, we just want more like, you know, fun. We want more like of these elements that I don't want. Like, I don't give a shit about.
But also in hindsight, we've been given the fun. So I guess that's what's so troubling watching this in 2020 is that like we know what fun Bond looks like. So when you see a movie like this that kind of goes in that different direction, like you said, like we want that different shit and we don't really get it. So that's probably the movie's fault. And it's so funny as well that you mentioned how close it is to the source material because I got a really fun fact for you. So in the initial draft of this movie, Brenton, I don't know if you know this, but Dr. No was initially a monkey.
Oh my goodness.
I am not fucking with you. This is a real thing in a real draft.
Can you elaborate, please?
Literally, that is all I know. All I know is in the initial draft, they made Dr. No a monkey, and then it got rejected and they hired new screenwriters.
It got rejected and they hired new screenwriters.
And I don't know how or why they integrated it, but I kind of want to see that movie.
Yeah.
Because that would have been the best gag of all. The whole movie builds up to this evil Dr. No. James Bond finally opens the door and it's a fucking monkey.
Gives him a banana.
It's funny because like we talk about the source material, but like I've never read a James Bond book. And part of me kind of wants to after now doing like half these movies. Like I want to know if this is better.
Yeah, totally. Well, Ian Fleming I want to like talk to Ian Fleming and be like, you know, what do you think? What do you think of what happened? You know, like.
Well, probably he did like. I do remember like ages back reading and feel like he did like these things, and he was involved early on, like because there's all these rights issues with the books, and I think he also helped like kind of shepherd this in, like the same way that like when Sean Connery was chosen, like you know they found the perfect Bond, like and there's so many other candidates they could have brought in, but you know they really nailed it with him. Like
to me, this movie, if I was to sum it up, it's like it's got a really solid first two acts. We get to the third act, the movie kind of collapses, and it's almost like they ran out of budget or something, and it's like they had to just wrap shit up. You know what I mean? At the end, and it just all kind of wraps up. And it's done. Yeah. And we just finish.
Oh, it's so anticlimactic as well.
Is it worth watching?
I'm guessing, Brenton, you want to rate this thing?
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
I don't know if I'm even ready to rate it. I just like, I don't even know, like, because I like it, and I'd probably watch it again over the other ones. And like, so my heart is saying that I want to give this a thumbs up.
Really?
Yeah, dude, like, because I liked it.
Would you really say to your mates, like, watch Dr. No?
I would over some of the other shit we've seen, like, to be honest, like.
Yeah, but you know, comparative shit aside, like, look at the movie as a standalone work of art, like.
Yeah, like, I don't think it's that bad. Like, look,
really?
I think it collapses on itself at the end or whatever.
Because I haven't had a lot of praise.
But again, that's like, I know I've been really critical, but like the last 5 minutes of it are like, meh, but like leading up to that, I was like having a good time. Like I said, like I was out of the old Bonds, it's the one I probably enjoyed the most. I like the character of Bond.
Wow.
I like the way Connery plays him, and you know, I don't mind it. Like, and I liked some of the scenes. I thought there was like a beginning, middle, and an end to like a lot of the scenes, as opposed to like fucking here's some exposition and then a line from Bond being
That's
like,
true. That's a good point.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fuck it, I'm gonna give it the thumbs up. I can change this later if I
Wow.
need to.
I mean, we don't look back until like, every 2 years, Brenton. So
Yeah, I
like-
know, but like if I need to, but like out of all the ones we've watched, I remember scenes, I remember moments in this movie, I remember specific scenes and like what was happening. I remember the tone of what was going on. I remember the music. I was into it. You know, I was enjoying it enough to be like, I'm having a good time. Yes, it collapsed in itself. Yes, it went back to some of the shit that like happens in like the later films in the franchise kind of expands upon those elements that I dislike, like a movie just based around those. But like, I wish that the franchise went in the other direction and really took this movie and went the other way with it.
I can see what you're saying because there's a lot of promise here of like deep character study work on the spy and
Yeah.
Bourne kind of flirts with this a little bit. There's some other spy movies that are great that kind of do it, but like I feel like the closest the new ones get to doing this kind of move is Skyfall, where we kind of just dive deep into James.
Totally. And what Skyfall does really well and what this movie does well sometimes is that there's still a balance. Like I know like listeners are probably going, oh fuck this guy, like, you know, like I just want to like a pulpy fun spy film. I want that as well.
Watch Goldfinger.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but I want that. But I think this movie still has elements of that, like in its opening, like 2 acts or whatever.
And I think you can balance it as well in a single film.
That's right. It can balance it. So I'm not saying that like I want like a deep character study that's really dark and like we do like Nolan's Batman or whatever with fucking like, because we got that as well. It's Casino Royale. But this, like what I got in the first 2 acts is like I thought was a good balance, and I did enjoy that. So yeah, thumbs up for me.
There you go. I am so shocked. I came in today, I convinced you were going to say no to this.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, as I was watching the movie last night, I was just like, there is no way Brendan's going to like this bullshit.
Because the other thing as well, like if I'm sorry, I'll compliment it as well. Sorry, like there is intrigue in this movie. There is intrigue that's built up in this movie that you're like, oh, what's going on? Like,
you know what? Maybe because I've seen this before. That's why I'm not feeling that for this viewing. Like, and
totally.
But from memory, because I saw this film like, maybe like 5 years ago, something like that. I think like back when I was in college, and like, yeah, I remember finding it fine back then. But I think I do recall being a little bit more interested in what I am now. So I think that might be a part of it. So
yeah.
Your fresh eyes give fresh praise.
So yeah, I'm giving it a thumbs up. Fuck it.
Me personally, like I so get where you're coming from, but I'm gonna stick the thumbs down and say start. I would say skip Dr. No, skip From Russia with Love, start with Goldfinger if you want to do a big old marathon.
Yeah, see, I'd watch this over Goldfinger. That's so funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Like, I really would. Yeah.
Wow. All right. There we go, listeners. All right. Well, you know, pick a side, and let's not spoil it. You spoiled it.
What?
The movie.
Oh. Just speaking of spoilers, like I wanted to talk about I wanted to start with a side character in this movie that I really liked that was kind of introduced. And it was actually it was interesting. I think it's the name is I go to call him Quirrell all the time, but I think it's Quarrel. Who was the he's like the Islander guy that's kind of like the
he's the local who like accompanies
the
them.
local guy
yeah
and he kind of like, you know, gives you insight into like the local perspective.
He's the Jamaican. It's like, really? I feel like the Jamaican's sole purpose was to alert Bond of danger. Like, that's his one job.
Totally. But, like, he was still, there's still enough character. There's still enough, like, intrigue to these people. Like, his introduction was really cool. That, you know, he pulls the knife on Bond, and then, like, they have that little tuffle, and then it's like the CIA guy comes in and is like, hey, no, what the fuck? Like, they're working with me, and we thought you were no good, but now we know you're all right. And so, like, and then he switches, and he becomes, like, this really kind of, like, personable guy. And then you like him, and then they kill him off, and you're like, oh, he's gone. Like, that's kind of sad. Like, I liked him in the movie, and that's what I wanted to talk about, was his death scene.
Breton, we need to talk about this dragon car. What the fuck is going on? What? Because like this whole movie, like there's this build up in Jamaica that like, oh, there's this dragon on the island, and Sean Connery's like, what the fuck are all you on? Like, he's just like, there's clearly not a dragon, but then like the main Bond chick's like, no, there's a dragon, and then like the guy's like, oh, superstition, man.
Literally every other character in this film is like, no, dude, there's a, like, dead set, there's a
dragon, and fucking, like, Daenerys rocks up with Drogon, I don't know. But, like, could you imagine, just, like, someone edits in, like, Dracarys, just, like... But here's the thing, like, this car rocks up, and it's the most stupid design I have ever seen for a vehicle in any movie, this is the stupidest one.
Whoa.
Yeah. You know that fucking like Meet the Robinsons car bullshit that they bubble about? And this is dumber than that, Brenton.
Can you please describe to our lovely listeners who may not have seen
So
this?
if you haven't seen Dr. No, one, good choice. And two, this fucking car, what they've done, and you can clearly see the production design team doing this, is that they've just gotten like random scraps of metal and kind of laid it on top of a clearly normal convertible.
Yeah.
And then put this huge bumper out the front and painted dragon teeth on top of it. And like they put like two headlights instead of in front of the car on the top of it to make it look as though it has eyes. And in the center of the bumper at the front is this nozzle that breathes fire.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Why does this exist in the movie? Does it ever explain it?
No, because I was thinking about it and I was like, whoa, wait. Is Dr. No like actively trying to recreate a myth? And if so, like if you were trying to create a myth and like deter people from coming to this place, right?
Yeah.
Which is fair enough. And you're like, maybe we get like this dragon thing. We like make people believe there's a dragon for generations or whatever. But like people bought that was a dragon.
Like they're all genuinely convinced. And I'm like, it's 1962. I'm like, what are you doing? Here's the thing as well. I'm not a connoisseur, Brenton, of Jamaican mythology. But I'm just going to have a bloody stab in the dark and guess that Jamaican mythology is not littered with local dragons.
I'm going to look it up right now. Jamaican mythology dragon.
Caribbean literature, I imagine, from like the indigenous population was not laid with dragons. So I doubt that there's this local myth of like a dragon like fucking about on the islands. So I don't know where exactly this came from. But furthermore, I don't know why it exists in the first place. I don't know how this dragon car helps Dr. No's operation. Is it there purely for security?
I think so. I think it's there as a deterrent. I
Why
think it's
not
like a
use
security
guns?
and a deterrent. Exactly. But hey, it works. I mean, like Quirrell, I'm just going to call him Quirrell now. Quirrell gets incinerated. Like straight
Oh
up
my
just
God.
like...
He gets burned alive, man. You see that corpse burn, and then it's like, whoa. And like, it's funny as well because like the main Bond chick is with Bond. She's kind of just watching, and she's like kind of shook by it. But James also looks quite shook too. Normally he's stoic in these kind of moments, but in this film you really see him like stomach these deaths that happen.
Yeah, totally. In saying that, there's a moment on that island that I really liked, and it's like when there's the guy that's like following them or whatever, and he swims up behind him and he like does like the silent takedown on him,
God.
and the girl's
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, I watched you murder someone." Like that was a great moment because like you saw
don't
like
see that in
again
a lot of
her-
other films.
Yeah, you saw her go like, "Oh my God, like I just watched someone die," and he's just like, "Hey, it's my job. It's what I do." You know what I mean? Like,
Of a license to kill. Here, take a look at it. Like,
so it was an interesting balance, but at the same time, when you again, like when you watch someone burn alive, especially by a dragon, I think it'd be pretty
oh my
scary.
God. Just like, I want to see that guy's funeral, you know, just like after the mission, just they're all standing around like some like beautiful Jamaican graveyard.
But the thing is, like, this dragon is like, because someone's seen it, I'm pretty sure, and they describe it, and they say it's got wings as well. Did you see any
It does not
wings
have
on this
wings.
convertible?
It's got the little tail thingies at the back, but bro, what the
Yeah.
fuck are they? Also, if you look at this thing, there's no fucking way, even in nighttime, if you just saw the outline, that this is not a dragon.
Yeah, totally.
Like in 1962, like Lord of the Rings existed by this point. Like you know what dragons are. Like
Yes.
you know what I mean.
Yes.
So like this
Yeah,
is
totally.
not news. And yet watch fucking Sleeping Beauty back then. They know what dragons are, and this thing is just sitting there. Like also, what's a dragon do? Okay, would this film have been better, Brenton, if it was a literal dragon? Would you have liked this movie more if somehow they make this fantasy based and James Bond has to fight a fucking dragon?
Maybe, but like again, like I think it would be breaking the rules of its own world.
I kind of want it though.
You kind of want it, but for me, there's always that scene was always going to be there was going to be something that looked like a dragon that had the
Yeah.
characteristics of a dragon that wasn't a dragon that people had mistaken for a dragon.
Okay, what if it was like some guy in like a Dorothy the Dinosaur kind of like outfit?
Oh, that'd be hilarious.
He's just holding a gun. He's like, roar. He's just shooting about.
He's just there like dancing about like hot potato, hot potato.
Like Wags is there as well. They got the whole gang and it's just like,
They got the whole thing. Henry the octopus is fucking about, just like.
oh my God. That big James Bond is like, did we have some bad mushrooms on this island? Like, what were in those seashells? Like, this is bad.
So we go through this segment. We meet the dragon. They kind of get captured. They get put in this lavish underground under the sea.
Da, 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 da.
They get put in their rooms. They get drugged or whatever. And then
Oh,
they.
by the way, speaking of under the sea, is that not the worst aquarium you've ever seen in a movie?
It's hilarious. They're like, I like how she's like, oh look, this thing's growing. It must mean we're like, however far deep, like how many leagues under the sea. And it's like that looks like literally like a box in the wall.
Oh my
like
God. It's like she looks at this aquarium and it's the most obvious projection of an aquarium on a wall you've ever seen in your life.
Totally.
Like it's a miracle you actually don't get her shadow on the aquarium just to fuck with it. Like, oh, it's so bad. Oh, sorry, I know you're heading in the direction of the island, but this links. Speaking of bad projection onto these characters, how terrible was the spider scene?
Oh gosh. Yeah.
You can so clearly tell that there's a pane of glass above Bond as the spiders are crawling about.
The other spider scene was interesting as well because that was pretty bad as well. Was like when the
Well, the cage.
yeah, we see the spider cage and the spider gets picked up in the cage. But that scene again, like how there's moments that have so much promise in this movie in that sense because like that scene opened on such a beautiful shot of like, you know, like the skylight in the ceiling basically.
It felt like Blade Runner 2049, like Jared Leto's little room. Like
it looked great, and so he comes in and whatnot, and then it just pans over to that fucking spider cage, and I was like, oh my god. And he picks it up, and he's terrified, and the actor's doing a really good job, but you look at this spider, and it's like clearly just like not moving or doing anything.
And he's just waiting for like the director to kind of like poke at it just to get it to move or something. Like
totally.
Like Terrence Young's out the side.
Or it's like on a string, and they just like wiggle it a bit, like they just like pull on the string, and it just kind of jostles a bit in the cage.
It's just jolting about. But I love when it crawls on James Bond. There's a shot where you see the lump of the spider under the blanket as it moves up.
Yeah.
And it's the most obvious not thing that's a spider. It's clearly just something on a stick. Oh,
that was incredible.
It's so good.
I forgot about that lump shot of like the
my
lump
god
moving up.
And then watching Sean Connery beat up the spider with his shoe.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
off camera.
He goes ape. It like crawls past him and he's like, right. And he just like gets up and he just like starts losing his, like I've seen people do this in real life as well. It was pretty spot on in terms of like
he's been through this before.
We've all been there. We've all had a big spider at some point.
We're both Australian. We've been there, mate. See, that's why I want to see this scene, but with George Lazenby's Bond, because him being Australian, he just wouldn't care.
Yeah, he'd like welcome it. He'd like welcome it in. He'd be like, hello, mate. How you going?
G'day, love. Oh, you remind me of my last missus. Just so.
Go on. I've got an extra pillow. Here, you sleep on that. Let's just hang out.
Oh my god. He's got like the spider on a fucking leash. Like,
let's have a little tangent, actually. Guys, if you are not Australian, but you still listen to the show, first of all, thank you for sticking with it. But second of all, here in Australia, like it's true, we do get a lot of spiders.
I'm looking at one right now.
Hey, look at my 8 legs. Jostle. Anyway.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, so we get a lot of spiders, and there's this spider called the huntsman, and I'd suggest looking it up. And these things are fucking everywhere. Like, they're honestly everywhere, especially like in summer, when it starts storming or whatever. These things are like, fuck, get inside, and they come to your house or whatever, and they like to hang out.
Yeah.
But no one likes these things for whatever reason. And they're not poisonous, they're fine, they're harmless.
They actually are. Despite how they look terrible, but they're fine.
They're really big, they're really hairy, and they're really ugly, and people are like, oh god, get it, kill it now. Funnily enough, too, like they eat cockroaches and stuff, like they eat the pets.
But they're good.
They're good to have around, but we kill them anyway because they're just not.
Because they're scary.
They're just not aesthetically pleasing.
Is Aragog a giant huntsman? I'm trying to remember like he looks a little bit like one.
He's got the design of a huntsman, yeah.
Yeah. Just like as the spider crawls up James Bond. Goodbye, friend of Hagrid. And he gets fucking swarmed. Oh.
I was not the monster in the chamber.
I forgot how shitty Aragog's dialogue was in that movie.
I need to watch it again. I used to love that scene as a kid. I'd watch that scene again. There's so much going on. Especially because, like, God, Nathan's lost it.
And Ron's just looking around, just sweating.
What's amazing about that scene too is that, like, I think what's so bad about that spider in particular is like because it was scary as a kid. Like you're like, holy fuck, that's it. And because the spider, what's weird is that Rowling makes that spider talk, right? So the spider can talk.
We don't see its mouth, but it's talking.
That's right. How do you convincingly make a spider talk? You know what I mean?
Oh.
So like the film just goes, all right, we'll just have like the close-ups on an Aragog will just be of like the 8 eyes. Like we'll just go straight to the 8 eyes. But the thing is, like, that's like an animatronic. It's clearly like an animatronic.
Yeah, it's so. That's why he's not moving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These dead looking, like no movement, like 8 eyes, and he just like
in the video games, that fucker leaps about when you're battling him. But like,
oh my gosh, that boss fight! I remember playing that on the PS2. Like Chamber of Secrets, great game. Fly around Hogwarts, it's a good time. So on the PS2, that boss fight, you start off on his web, right? So you have to like, he's like in his cave or whatever, and like he's above the cave, sorry, and it's like this great expanse thing, and you have to like set flames to like the edges of the web where it's like attaching to like the top of the cave.
Yeah, and he's like shooting poison at you as he's doing it, like.
Yeah, dude, and then he falls in. And I remember playing this as a kid, and I was like, oh, cool, I finished it. And then, like, I fell in with him, and I was like, oh, no. And you have this boss fight where you're fucking about in this cave, and he just, like, he just crawls at you, dude. It's, like, it's so unsettling.
It's
he
so
just, like,
terrifying.
fucking goes at you.
Yeah, but in the movie, they couldn't pull that off.
Totally. But, like, the smaller spiders are good in the movie. Like, I remember, like, when Ron the whole time's, like, going, hurry, hurry. And they look up, and then, like, they're all, like, coming down. And that's when Harry's
Oh.
like, Daniel Radcliffe, great acting, he's like, well, thank you. We'll be going now. He's like, I think not.
Oh, that's so. And like, I forgot how awkward Daniel Radcliffe is in that scene. And like, the car fucking rocks
totally.
up, and Daniel like was awkwardly trying to get in the car, like, and the face Ron makes when the spiders got him, like,
Yeah, I know.
and he's choking him.
That thing's pincers are like wrapped around like Ron's neck. Like that thing could just easily bite his head off. He's like, and the sound it makes. And what's the spell he does? He's like,
It's like Richter Semper or something like that.
yeah, that's it. Richter's Emperor.
And he just pushes him back. And it's funny because like Ron never mentions that again. Like if that happened to a 12-year-old child, which is his age in the movie, you would be traumatized for years. Like
I couldn't imagine anything worse than like a giant spider's pincers just wrapped around my neck. Maybe it was trying to make love to him. I don't know. Like maybe it wasn't trying to kill
yeah,
him. Like, it
the
was
scene
like,
just turns very like Harry's like, ooh. Do you want me to get out of the car? Give it just to you? Like, tosses Ron's the keys.
I bet you somewhere that porno
no,
exists.
that
mate.
fanfiction definitely exists. Jesus. Oh.
The other thing I was going to say about the Harry Potter scene, I was going to say about spiders in movies. I think the most convincing giant spider that's ever been in a movie is Shelob from Return of the King.
Oh yeah, she's great.
That's disgusting. Like that is so disgusting that
Because
spider.
also her saliva is very drippy. Like it's really wet and slippery that like they get wrapped up in.
It's like a funnel web spider. It's legitimately like the way it moves and shit through those caves. You're like, oh god, like god no.
Yeah, she's quite quick as well, and I love it as well because in that scene you just got like Gollum going like, just like cheering her on, and Hisoka and Mocap's like, yeah, kill him.
What I can't imagine though is that like why in the Hobbit? So like the Hobbit, I think it's the Desolation of Smaug, the second one.
Yeah,
they have like the spider segment with like all of Shelob's children that they run into.
That's right. They're like
and,
jumping about. Yeah.
So they're in there, and then like those spiders are just like so much worse than Shelob, and like why? How did they fuck it up?
And considering this is a prequel, we never know what happens to them.
Yeah, they just kind of like rock up and they just leave. And the thing was as well, I'm pretty sure in the books, like, because Bilbo puts the ring on and then he can understand what the spiders are saying as well. Like they're all like talking to each other.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's tangent over. Spiders.
Jesus. Great. I'm glad we had a chat then.
I'll get us back to the point I was making about the end of the movie.
Okay.
Back on the island, so they get drugged, by the way, and then like I'm like, oh no, they've been drugged. What's going to happen? What torture chamber are they going to be in? And it's like, no, and it was pretty smart. I was like, oh, they just drugged them so that like when he was ready to see them, they'd be like they couldn't escape or whatever. That's smart. So so then we meet Dr. No, and what was so funny about this scene is that he walks into the room and you're like, oh, he looks like quite a normal, like apart from obviously the ethnicity issue, which we've addressed. He looks like a normal dude, and then he like. It just casually reveals his hands. Like, it's the most casual reveal of, like, a body disfigurement I've ever seen in a movie. He just kind of walks in with his hands behind his back and he's like, oh, you see my hands, obviously. And then he reveals them. But, like, it's not, like, horrifying. You're like, I'm still confused as to what happened. Because there was, like, radiation poisoning or something. I think he was, like, radiation got to them or something. But, like, he's just got these, like, weird prosthetic-looking hands that are just, like, in gloves that are too big for them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we clearly know his hand's actually attached. He's just got it frozen the whole time. This, like, awkward kind of, like, turn kind of pose. But it's so funny because like he's not bloody Jaime Lannister. Like, you know, we're not seeing his struggle with no hands.
No.
We're not moved by this at all. And it's so funny because this one thing about him that should be like, oh, disfigured and disgusting is his downfall. So like it's the reason he dies.
Which is the next thing I was going to bring up is that there's this weird... So basically we head to the end of the movie and I'm still kind of not sure what is happening. Like what the plan is. They're just going to like intercept like...
Interestingly, he works for Spectre, which I liked.
Yeah.
I was like, here we go.
Even more interestingly enough, like I liked where this was going. Again, like I liked the scene between him and James. Like James is like, get rid of the girl, and he's like, yeah, get rid of her or whatever. He's like, yeah, the guards can have fun with her, and James is like, that's not what I meant, fuck. Anyway, and so they have this discussion, and he tries to convince James to like join Spectre or like see if he's worthy of joining Spectre.
Yeah.
Bond's like, look, send the girl away, she's not involved. And he's like, send the girl away and give it to the guards. And James is like, that's not what I meant, but I'll get her later, it's all good. Anyway, so she goes, and then they just have this scene where like Bond just tries to antagonize him, and he's just like, I thought you were like smart. I wanted you to join Spectre, but now I just think you're a dickhead, so you can die.
He was always salty about saying no, like...
But like, why doesn't he just kill him? Because then he's like, oh, we'll soften him up for later. And then they beat him up a bit and put him in his cell. And then James proceeds to like, this is the most contrived bullshit. This is when the movie lost me, is when I was like, he's in the cell and I was like, what's he going to do? And he just easily gets out and then like gets to the reactor or whatever. And then this is the scene that I was leading to, is that like then they have the tuffle or whatever on the lift as it lowers into the water. Oh. And it's like the worst fight scene I've ever seen in a movie.
It's so terrible. It reminds me of one of the Bond films we reviewed where they were underwater and they're fighting in the sub like tunnel thing. The Bond girl, Bond and the villain. I forget which one.
Wasn't that the film with Jaws?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. That was also pretty terrible as well. It reminds me a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I think The Spy Who Loved Me is the name of it.
What happens is basically Bond just basically pushes Dr. No underneath him and and he gets
like
out
a
of
childhood shove. Like.
there. And then I love that Dr. No's just like kind of like reaching up, like, oh, like just trying to get to the thing. But because his hands are metal, you just have this weird shot that I wanted to pick for the still this week of like his weird gloved hands like just sticking out of the water, and it's meant to like be this like moment.
God.
But it's so funny.
It's so terrible. Like, you can almost just hear him say the words "I'm melting" as he's going down.
Yeah, totally. Exactly.
Oh, jeez. They should have put him in the Wizard of Oz, Brenton.
They should have. Could you imagine Dr. No as the Wicked Witch of the West?
Oh, that'd be great. He's like, Dorothy rocks up and he's like, I've been expecting you. Like, here's a martini. And like, like the Tin Man's just very confused.
He like rocks up and then he like looks over and he like sees, he's like, no, you killed my sister. And you see like some random feet just like popping out underneath like this house or whatever.
Bring back Courtney. We'll get her opinion on this.
Absolutely.
Oh, that'd be great. Well, I think I also want to mention that we've completely avoided this whole review is the Bond girl, like Honey Rider.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I liked her.
yeah, she's a bit like, we meet her, she's collecting shells. Like, you know.
Okay, so for me, she was like the most like unsocialized person like ever.
Yeah.
Like, out of all the Bond girls, like she's like not really socially all there. Like, and like her backstory makes sense. Like her backstory, you're like, oh, this all makes sense now. You're just a weirdo. Like,
this is the weirdest backstory I have ever heard for a character. So they're sitting down, like her and Bond, like, you know, bloody getting all cozy at the campfire. And she proceeds to tell him that as she was raised, she was homeschooled, and the only piece of education she had was she was given one encyclopedia, and she's learned everything from this one encyclopedia.
A to Z.
No. She says she's only read from A to T.
Yeah, that's right. A to T, sorry. Yeah.
So I presume that she has no knowledge of anything that starts with U, V, X, Y, or Z. So maybe because she recently read the seashell section because it's next to T, that's why she's got this obsession. So maybe when she gets to W, she'll like shift her focus to whales or something. Like, I don't know.
I wonder what happens to her after this film. You know what I mean?
Oh.
What's funny about it too is that like she like the only reason she becomes involved in this is because she's literally just picking up seashells at this random spot where James wakes up and he's like, "G'day." And by the way, next minute when that boat comes along with the machine gun and they're like,
"Oh my god,
all right, we warned you," and then they just start machine gunning the beach.
That guy, you can so tell that guy on the megaphone fucking loves his job. Like, you can tell he really loves like shouting on that megaphone. Totally. He's like that annoying like PE teacher who's got the megaphone and just uses it way too much at the carnival.
He was the worst actor in the movie, by the way. Like the whole way through, that guy was just like the worst.
He was so bad.
What's also funny about that moment as well is Quirrell on the beach with the crab. He's like, "Oh, there's a crab." And it like crawls down towards him.
The Jamaican bloke's just hiding and the crab's just like across the screen. Like, it's so stupid. But like, it's funny because all this is preceded by the most iconic shot in any James Bond movie, which is Honey Rider getting out of the water.
And that's right. She's singing the coconut mango whatever song.
This is so weird because like, I can't imagine any other Bond movie doing this. She starts singing and then James Bond joins in.
Yeah.
So like, they're both humming a tune. Could you imagine in fucking Casino Royale, like Daniel Craig getting out of the water like Honey Rider, then fucking Vesper starts like whistling a tune? You know what I mean? It just wouldn't work.
It's so funny. I was like, this is really interesting that Bond's a singer. Maybe what happens after this is that the two of them go do a karaoke session. Maybe. Like, I don't know.
They should. And like, because I like it, but it's funny because like, you know, her getting out of the water is this iconic moment, right? And like, and you can see why. Like, she is so beautiful, and like that bikini is iconic, and like the design's there, and you're all for it. And it's funny, I still think it has the same impact in 2020.
Yeah.
Because it's such an iconic image. I'm sure back then it would have been more iconic because the bikini was still so fresh and new. But now it still feels like, wow, like, look at this chick with a bikini and a knife. Like, that's what a combo.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great moment. You know, like it's a famous moment for a reason, and it works. And then we find out her great backstory, and it makes it even better.
Jesus, Honey Rider, just no.
Good times. Nathan, should we get into some special segments?
Let's do it.
Special segment!
Ooh, so special. So fan theories, it's one we haven't done in a while. This is a segment where we try and find fan theories for the movie and talk about if they're legit or not. But this actually is not about Dr. No, Brenton. This is more about the Bond franchise in general, and I want to talk to you about this now that we've done half of them. Before Skyfall was released, there was a prevailing theory that like all the James Bond films were in continuity. I don't know if you know this, like, this fan theory before, but like it's where there is no actual James Bond.
Yeah, the James Bond is an alias
Yeah.
that the 007 agent uses.
Yeah, exactly. So like, and as each Bond guy go, the new one picks it up. So like, Skyfall kind of shattered it, where it's like, no, he was brought up in Scotland under Mr. and Mrs. Bond. So ignoring Skyfall, would you want this theory to be a thing?
Absolutely. I think it's a great theory. Like, I think it's such a cool idea. Like, I've
Yeah.
always liked that idea that these movies are all connected in that sense.
Yeah.
Thanks, Skyfall, for shitting on the bed. Thanks for that. Like,
Oh,
thanks
jeez.
for... Please clean the sheets and just get it off. Like, no one needs it, okay?
Go set up your bloody like Home Alone house scene in the third act.
Yeah, but like, I think it's a great idea. Like, of course that would make sense. Like, I think it's brilliant.
Because then you could have these retired 00 agents brought back into it. You could have like retired Timothy Dalton. You could have like retired.
Oh man, could you imagine that? Could you imagine if like Timothy Dalton rocked up as like the new Q agent or whatever in like one of the like a movie, and it was like, oh,
He's like, I used to be James Bond, but like, you know,
Yeah.
I had to be let go, and he's like, oh, so you're the new James Bond, you're Lady Bond, and like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, it would be interesting. That's why in Skyfall, I kind of got disappointed when the old guy at the house wasn't Sean Connery.
yeah,
Like, you could, I haven't found any evidence for this, but I bet my bottom dollar that Barbara Broccoli did approach Sean Connery for that. They would have had to, right?
but see, I don't know if they did. I don't think they would have. I think Connery might have done it.
Really? Because he's been pretty adamant since League of Extraordinary Gentlemen that he is done. Like, he's done with like acting.
Yeah, but you know, I could see him doing it. I could see him
You
coming
reckon?
back to do it. I don't think that was ever on the table.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I guess it's just more hope, if anything. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
But
it
it
would have
would've
been
been
cool.
cool.
Could you imagine if Connery just rocked up?
At the end of Skyfall as well, like how they just like shoot down the helicopter and like Daniel Craig's working with him. Like Judi Dench, Daniel Craig, Sean Connery. Like that would have been just amazing.
Oh my goodness, that would.
Yeah, so,
Wow.
well, that's a fan theory. But you wanted to bring in a new special segment today.
I am bringing in a new special segment
I love
today.
new
Nate.
segments, Brenton.
This new segment, which we'll use when it is appropriate on the
Yes.
show, is this movie worth the franchise?
Ooh, I like that a lot, Brenton. Well done. Here, have a cookie. Go on. Just have a little munch.
Thank you. Hum, hum, nom, 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 nom.
Oh, cookie. That's a really good point, because Brenton, this is no Iron Man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. You know what I mean? Like, this is a fine movie, like, on its own, but, like, the fact that this has spawned, like, arguably the greatest film franchise of all time
Yeah.
is bonkers.
Like, we'll get to how much money it made back like later on, because it made a fuck ton of bank. But like, it's so funny because like Iron Man, you can genuinely see that franchise building, that kind of stuff, and like it's an excellent standalone film. With Doctor No, it's funny because there really is no continuity payoff if you do watch this before the others.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just not even that it needs that necessarily. Like, I'm fine with stories or franchises that aren't necessarily connected. Like, look at video games. Look at like Final Fantasy. Like, none of those stories are connected, right? But they're in the same series. They're just all like different stories or whatever. Like, that's fine. I can get amongst that. The fact that this features like the same character is like concerning at the same time. But like, I just see nothing like in this movie. Like, I think it's good and whatnot. But a sequel is just like, to me, it's just like, oh, maybe, I guess, maybe. Whereas you think of something, say, like Star Wars that came out, and you're like, obviously that became a film franchise. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah,
But
that
also, they
makes sense.
started it as an episode 4. You know, it's like.
Well, no, they didn't.
Well,
It just came out as Star
technically
Wars.
No, but like, it was always meant to be this like, let's jump into the middle of this universe and just like in medias res, to use the formal term, and then just run
Yeah.
with it. It's funny because like I would argue that Casino Royale is a more franchise starting film than this.
Totally. I would totally agree with that.
Which is why probably everyone does say watch that one first. Because one, it's probably one of the best ones ever made. But two, it does generally do that setup.
And it does the setup of the character really well. as
Yeah.
well. You get it, like, gives you a reason for why James is the way he is.
So like, yeah, I'm very surprised that this is like the launching one. And it's funny because if you compare it to like other franchise starting films, right? Compare it to like Man of Steel, you compare it to like Harry Potter 1, you compare it to like Star Wars, all that kind of stuff. It has the stuff there. It has the staples that eventually carry on, but it doesn't really use it or milk it in that kind of sense.
No.
We know in Harry Potter 1 that we're going to spend a fuck ton of these films at Hogwarts. So the first movie does a lot of heavy lifting of actually setting up Hogwarts as a place.
The only thing this movie could be arguably do, I think, that you could be like, oh yeah, no, it sets up a thread, is that it sets up the Spectre thing. That's the only thing it does.
Yeah, and even then, it's not. You don't get much of a payoff. Like Blofeld's interesting, but he's actually not that prevalent in the series as people would think. Like he's no Voldemort, you know. He's got a nose.
Oh gosh, no.
Doctor No.
He's Doctor Yes, am I right?
Ooh.
Speaking of yes, Nathan, can you tell me what stills this movie?
Ooh,
it's blinding.
Well, what steals this movie is a segment where we choose a frame, Brenton, whether it be beautiful or stupid, mostly stupid, and we put it on our Instagram links below if you want to have a look at it. The frame that is here, Brenton, broke the camel's back for me because at the start of this movie, one of the other agents gets shot in like a Kingston house or whatever, and we see her on the floor with what is clearly just some like red paint, like just awkwardly splattered on top of her.
Yeah, it looks like she was playing a game of paintball.
I think, Brenton, this is the worst gunshot reveal I have ever seen in a movie.
Wow. And that's saying something because like we've seen a lot of movies that have had probably not the best practical effects when it comes to blood or, when it comes to wounds, you know what I mean? Like on this show. But it's interesting that this one did you in. This was the one that just like...
I swear to God, I did this scene in like year 10 art class where like I had a little bit of paint splattered on me and I just like pretended to like collapse on the floor dead. I swear to God, I've done this. So like looking at this lady just with this, I know this movie was made for $1 million, Brenton. It was made on like shoestring budget back in the day, like
Totally.
proper low budget shit. But even so, it's like there's not even like a little hole where like the bullet would have gone through. It's just I am so sick of old movies being so terrible at this, and I don't know why. This is like what 20 years after the Second World War happened. People know what gunshot wounds look like, so I don't know why movies did this.
Well, I think there'd be a whole discussion on ratings issues and like what was appropriate at the time.
You reckon it is that censorship?
Yeah, I think it might be that potentially, but also like budget as well. Now, what's interesting about this photo as well, I just noticed this still, I should say, is that if you look at her left hand, it looks like she's actually got like the sponge of like the makeup sponge that's like
she just applied it herself.
Yeah, like and she's been like, now act dead, sure, but they forgot to like take it out of her hand. Like I know that's obviously not the case, but that's what it looks like. It's so funny.
Oh, and you can clearly tell that they brought some like they bought some cheap rug to like put the red paint on because they couldn't actually have it on the nice timber floor.
Looks like a straw rug or something.
It's just terrible, Brenton. It's no good.
Hey.
Let's
look at this film's poster.
Brenton.
Yes.
Let's look at this film's poster.
But is it art? Nathan, this poster does the cardinal sin.
Is it really a cardinal sin?
No, it's not. Brenton
does this weird niche thing where for some reason you don't like landscape posters, which I don't understand.
I just don't like them. I just don't get
it's
amongst
fine.
it.
I like them. You know what? The next poster I'm going to get is deliberately going to get a landscape poster.
Nathan, there's a lot going on here. So you got the yellow. I like the yellow. I like the red
Yes.
text. I love that. I like the images that are there. I think it all works. I'm not sure if I like the James and what's her face like lying on the beach. I don't know if that's necessary.
Oh, her and Honey Rider.
Yeah. The thing that's the funniest thing about this poster though is the fact that next to the title Dr. No is like is half of Dr. No himself.
Oh, and he's just like half awkwardly obscured.
Oh, it's too good.
It's ridiculous. And it's like, and it's funny as well because like there's not that much iconic imagery besides obviously Bond himself. They haven't even got Honey Rider in her famous bikini. She's just in like a normal one. So like, and it's funny, it says the first James Bond film, and how bloody like presumptuous is that for a movie's poster? You know what I mean?
I know, exactly. They're like, we're throwing all the dollars into this. We're going to make this a franchise.
Right.
You know?
It's like when Pokemon was like the first movie. It's like, wow.
Totally.
Okay. I mean, 20 movies later they have continued, but it's like, come on. Like that's a bit forward.
But Nathan, in saying that as well, like the image of Sean Connery as Bond himself, like on this poster is fantastic.
Oh, it's iconic.
It's so good.
It's funny because he's actually because Sean Connery himself is only 32 years old in this movie, but he looks like 40. Like,
oh, really?
you don't think?
I think he looks like early 30s.
That's what you're gonna look like in 7 years, Brenton.
You bet your bottom dollar. I'd be glad to look like that at any point in my life. I'd be glad to look like that.
To look like Sean Connery. There you go. But there's nothing you'd want to change about this poster.
Just the fact that it's landscape, really, and to remove the image of them both on the beach would be all I'd take away, and I think it's pretty right.
It's pretty good. Title talk.
Ooh, it's the title. Dr. No. Was there Dr. No and Dr. No, Nathan?
Oh, barely. Like, way too little, Brenton, in my opinion. It should have fucking opened with him, Open with the villain, introduce the threat, all that kind of stuff.
Well, what would you have called it instead?
Well, it's funny because it's literally adapting the book Dr. No, so this is more of a blunder on, Ian Fleming's part than Eon Productions.
Because I don't mind the title. I think it's fine.
Maybe Dr. Yes or No? That could be the tagline. Yes or no?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's fun.
It's funny that none of these titles ever have James Bond in them.
Nah.
Yeah, but I kind of also don't want that. Like, it takes it away. Even maybe 007 could be a better title.
Nah, I think Dr. No is enough.
I'll let it slide, but still, there should have been a lot more Dr. No, Brenton.
Well, Nathan, let's pass that power to the people. Pass it here.
What?
The power to the people. So, if you guys head on over to the website, Rotten Tomatoes, and on there you can find the critical consensus for this film, and it sits at a fine 95% with an audience rating of 82%.
Way too high. way too high.
I can understand at the time why the critical consensus was that high. Like, you know, it's a decent movie. I gave it a positive score. I can understand that.
They share my own opinion. It's I understand it. But look at this thing's bank. It cost $1 million to make. It made 59. Isn't that insane?
Yeah, man. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, no wonder they afforded this franchise.
We can make 50 more of these things.
And it's funny because subsequent sequels costed around about the same as well. These were really cheap movies to make, and they kept on like fucking rolling in bank. Oh, they were the bloody Blumhouse of their day, Brenton.
Good on them. Good on Dwight McDonald from Esquire magazine that gave it a rotten review and said, the first half hour I took to be a fairly good spoof on sex espionage films in general. Then James Bond lands on Dr. No's atomic island and science fiction takes over with lethal results in every sense of the word. Every sense of the word, sorry, my apologies. Yeah, like that's a pretty good summation.
And it's funny because I guess it could be a spoof on sex espionage films, but like it doesn't really go there. It still tries to ramp it in seriously. Like, do you think this would have been better without the whole atomic science fiction plot if it was just like a guy with a missile or something?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think so too.
I'd have to agree.
Well, Zaki Hassan from Zaki's Corner liked it, and he said Dr. No is a solid, if unspectacular, start to the longest-lived movie series of all time. Are you surprised that it spawned this many sequels?
Yes. But you look at the box office and you can see why. You know, you can see why they were like, oh, this is easy money.
It would have been interesting if this bombed. Sorry, not Bond. If this bombed.
Yep.
It would have been interesting to see if the rights had changed, if they took it a different direction. Like,
I just think it would have died. I just think it would have gone away.
See, I would love to see this series animated.
An animated Bond.
I'm genuine about that. Like, I think you could do some really interesting things visually animated wise with this character and with these kind of sets.
All right. I'll hold you to that.
I'll start drawing now, Brenton.
Austin Kennedy from Sin magazine gave it a rotten review and said, the film geek in me wants to praise it, but the film critic in me wants to expose its flaws. I still have a soft spot for it, but if I'm being truly honest, it's kind of lackluster. Yeah, it was kind of having the dilemma that I was having, I think.
Yeah, so you're definitely not alone, Brenton. Maybe you should write for Sin magazine.
Hey man, you know me, all those sins.
Here we go. James B gave it half a star, Brenton, and wrote, bad movie. Don't bother watching it. Doesn't even look good for the time and super boring.
Whoa. Those are big words, James B. Half a star, like it deserves more than half a star. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, yeah, it's not that bad. It's definitely not the worst Bond film we've reviewed, but
I give it a solid 3 stars. And then listen to this and the title will make sense. When I was a kid, I wanted to be James Bond. Now as an adult, I still want to. Lol.
It's funny because would you recommend any of these for children?
Not really. I don't think they're for kids. I don't think kids would appreciate it. Like, I think as a kid, I'd get pretty bored by this. Like, I'd be like, oh, what the hell's going on? Like, what's interesting about this?
Yeah, exactly. I would be bored shitless. Like, I'm sure maybe with the Craig's one, I'd find it okay because they're a little bit quicker, but like, these ones, nah.
Yeah, but then like the Craig ones are like too full on for kids, I think. You know what I mean? Like, because watching Casino Royale as a kid and like the torture scene where he's got like the rope and he's like whacking his balls with it. Yeah, I don't think I could handle that as a kid.
Oh.
I'd just be like, oh my gosh, why is this happening?
But yeah, those were some thoughts, and that, Brenton, was Dr. No.
That was Dr. No. I'm surprised, Nathan. I gave this a thumbs up and you gave it a thumbs down. Like, the fact that has occurred on this show, I think it's occurred once before, by the way, but it's a miracle.
It is. I can't believe it happened. I was genuinely convinced you and I would both be shitting on this the whole episode.
Well, there was shit, but it wasn't from the both of us. So,
oh no.
Thank you for tuning in once again to Classic Movie Banter. We really appreciate it, and we love it when you guys talk to us online because it makes us feel like we have friends.
Oh my god.
If you liked Dr. No, if you disliked Dr. No, let us know what you thought.
Pass us a little note, tick yes or no.
Answer the poll. Let us know on Twitter, let us know on Instagram, let us know on YouTube, let us know via email what you thought. And more importantly, if there's any other old movies, older than 20 years, just as a reminder, that you'd like to see us review on the show. What really helps us out as well is if you guys give us a little review or like a little like or a little subscribe on the various platforms. We really appreciate that.
Nothing too big, only little.
No, only little ones.
1 letter reviews. Just give us a big Y for yes.
Yes, please. But yeah, apart from that, that's about it, Nathan. We've done it again. Another Bond. Done and dusted.
Maybe there was some time to die after all, Brenton.
No, please don't say there is time to die. I've got so much to live for.
Sorry, Brenton. It had to end like this.
Oh, he missed.